Tēnā koutou katoa. Hello. I'm David Warburton, Independent Chair of the Stormwater Technical Working Group that was established in March 2021. The working group was established to identify future arrangements for the planning and management of stormwater services and how those services could be successfully delivered by proposed water services entities, whilst protecting and enhancing the relationship between the proposed water services entities and the local authorities. The working group includes members with experience, knowledge and expertise drawn from across the three water sectors: our drinking water, our wastewater, our stormwater sectors, council operations, river management groups, transport and regulating operators, tikanga Maori, engineers, scientists and planners all came together. Following a series of workshops with this group and comprehensive sector engagement, the working group prepared a report which sets out a proposed approach to the transfer of stormwater functions and delivery to the new water services entities. As chair of the working group and on behalf of the group, I'm really pleased to present this report to you. The key transfer issues came up during the discussions. These included working through the issues with the group. There are significant benefits to be gained through an integrated three waters delivery and increased investment, which will enable essential progress to be made on challenging issues, which include improving stormwater quality. But there are a range of existing and future challenges that we will need to address to support any transfer, and we identified these in our discussions. The lack of consistent national standards and an approach to the management and delivery of stormwater services. The complexity of the legislative policy and planning framework for stormwater. The lack of clarity around accountabilities, responsibilities, and the powers to act. The complex and variable nature of stormwater arrangements around Aotearoa, and the need to ensure that stormwater systems contribute to the delivery of multiple outcomes, not just for stormwater, but also for the transport system, recreation and urban amenity needs, and the environment. The transfer principles were to guide the transfer of stormwater functions to the proposed water services entities. The working group identified some key principles. These include that water services entities should adopt a ki ota ki tai perspective, or a mountain to the sea, the philosophy of environmental and resource management for the three waters. They should apply an integrated catchment management approach that considers both stormwater quantity and quality. They must give effect to Te Mana o Te Wai and work in partnership with tangata whenua and mana whenua. The stormwater management should be transferred at the same time as drinking water and wastewater functions, and that the transfer of responsibilities should not leave stranded assets behind with the local authorities. We consider this an important point. It also proposed water service entities have technical and operation capacity and capability, which should be leveraged to back support regional and local authorities. It also said that the civil defence and emergency management roles and responsibilities should remain at local, regional and national level, but that the proposed water services entities should have the obligations of lifeline utility operators to support those functions. The transfer framework is set out in the report at a high level to guide the transfer of some of these stormwater functions. There are three key areas that we looked at to focus on. The first is the transfer of local authority stormwater assets to the proposed water service entities. This includes the following considerations. Existing ownership of the land and stormwater assets should be retained where possible by the current owners. But whether assets are transferred will be determined by their predominant use and their criticality for the operation of the stormwater system. If the predominant use is not stormwater, such as a park or a road or a cycle bay, then it will not be transferred. But if the asset or land is critical to the function of stormwater systems, then the proposed water services entity and the current owner must establish an agreement to manage the interface between the respective functions for the underlying use and the stormwater system. For example, if a playing field is an attenuation device, or a cycleway is a swale, its predominant use is sport or transport, but its critical use is stormwater. And so the asset would remain with the current entity, but the critical nature of it needs to be accommodated in the agreement. These agreements must recognise the importance of all the outcomes, including the non-stormwater critical functions. These assets transfer principles should be employed flexibly because there will be special cases. It will vary across the country and the needs will need to be considered on their merits. The second area of focus is the future regulatory interfaces to maintain and operate the stormwater network, and this considered that environmental outcomes and standards for stormwater discharges should continue to be regulated by the regional councils. The proposed water service entities would be responsible for managing the stormwater system to meet environmental standards that are set through planning and consent processes. The stormwater catchment management plan should be developed by the proposed water service entities to provide a framework for the delivery against their regulatory requirements. The proposed water service entities should have limited powers, like local authorities, to support them to maintain and operate stormwater systems. And then the third area of focus is managing the interfaces between the agencies, land and infrastructure. This considered that the proposed water services entity would not own all of the assets or land that support the stormwater systems to deliver the outcomes required. Any future arrangements will require ongoing collaboration between the proposed water services entity, local authorities, regional councils, road controlling authorities, and any other entity that was involved in the process. This would mean that they would need to establish an interface agreement with key public sector entities for the operation and maintenance of activities and the funding and future investment arrangements for those functions. To ensure consistency, a national approach would be needed to develop a framework to mandate these interface agreements. But that individual agreement should be defined through direct engagement between the proposed water service entities and the respective local authorities and agencies to meet the appropriate local conditions. In conclusion, further work and more engagements required. But if the reform proceeds, this framework can be used to guide the transfer process through transition and into the implementation phases to ensure the new stormwater management system is efficient, effective, and improves stormwater outcomes. In addition, it will help to close the water cycle and provide protection and enhancement for our greatest asset. Ngā mihi nui, and thank you very much for taking the time to listen. Kia pai tau rā. Have a great day.